What's going on, everybody? In this video we're going to be giving this small block Chevy a Craigslist rebuild. For those of you that don't know what a Craigslist rebuild is, it's pretty much clean the thing up and make it look pretty. Yeah, that's really going to be about it. Other than that, we're going to get it running, make sure it is a good running motor, and pretty much I'm just doing this as a spare motor to keep in the corner for a future project. I don't need it at this very time, but it's always good to have an extra small block Chevy around because they're not getting that easy to find anymore. That being said, this is a 1967 283. I learned that because I ran the casting number at the back of the block, and these are power pack heads, which are like a really good head for a 283. Other than that, it's got an Edelbrock reformer intake and a Holley carburetor. I think it's a 600. I don't know. I haven't really looked into it that much. I just know it's a Holley because it says Holley. And it's got vacuum secondaries, not mechanical secondaries, and it's got an HEI distributor in it, which would not be factory, I don't think, to this motor. I think it should have had points. Another thing that's not factory is this whole alternator setup stuff here. Is it would have, because these heads don't have accessory bolt holes in them, so somebody's drilled and tapped the head over here to fit this alternator on it. So I'm gonna pull all this stuff off the front and pressure wash it and start cleaning it up. So this motor is practically exactly how I bought it, minus the fact I put some spark plugs in it just so it wasn't sitting completely open. Other than that, I have done nothing to it other than pull the Velcros off to run the numbers. Probably find a bolt to pull these, or a box to pull these bolts in, so I don't lose them. Not that I'm going to reuse them, but I might. Never mind. That bucket's good for now. I put the motor back together for it just to sit in the corner. I'm not going to put any of this front drive stuff on, just because I may not need it for whatever application I'm using. So I'm just going to leave it off, and then I'll put them on eventually for whatever car I put it in. Because I could use, this is a long water pump, so I either might use this or I might use a short one, and this one doesn't sound the greatest anyways, so I probably won't reuse it at all. This battery's dying. battery's also dying. Well, somebody's been in here at some point in life, because that timing cord is painted white, and that would not be factory. Another fun fact about 283s is, if it's still somewhat original, there'd be no crank bolt holding the balancer on. They're just pressed on. I have one somewheres around here. It's a 283 that somebody drilled the crank and put just a normal bolt in it to hold it on, which would not be factory. And the reason I put these bolts back in the balancer and didn't throw them in the bucket like everything else is mainly because these are fine thread, and it's harder for me to find fine thread bolts all the way around anywhere's in here. So I just put those back in there so I don't lose them when I need them in the future. These mounts also are not the greatest, but I'm going to keep them just in case I ever need them at some point in life for like a mock-up or something. I'm going to leave the fuel pump on it, just so it's there. Get a few of these hoses off I don't need. Put a cap over that eventually. Probably remove this fuel filter too. Leave the hard line to hook that back up to the carburetor after when we try to get it running, but I'll put all new hoses on it once it gets there. Also going to remove the water neck, because whatever water neck I use, I won't need that hole anyway, so let's get rid of that now too. And I can see there's a thermostat in it, which is another thing I don't normally use unless I'm putting the motor in a car that needs heat. That's really the only benefit of the thermostat, so you have heat in the winter. Alright, I think this thing is to the point of how I want it, I believe. Pulling off just a few other little brackets. Somebody's replaced a freeze plug on this side because it has a rubber one in it. I'll show you that in a second too. And there's a weird drain plug on this thing. It's not a normal bolt, which I'll show you that too in a second. Tell I need a new toolbox too. This thing's kind of broken. But it works for now. So right here is that freeze plug I was telling you about. This is just kind of like a quick fix almost. You knock the old one out, you put a rubber one in there, you just tighten this nut right here until it seals it, I guess, and it won't fall out. Which they do work, and obviously it looks like it was done a very, very long time ago. And it's like the only part of the motor in this area that is dry. So I'm going to assume that's fine, and I might keep it that way for now. I might put a new, like a factory one back in it, like this guy right here, but we'll get there when we get there, I guess. Other than that, not the prettiest under here. I'm gonna clean that all up too. This is a like the road draft PVC PCV tube or something. They capped that off. I'll probably get rid of this and just put a different cap on there that looks a little better than this. Other than that, I'm gonna have to put different valve covers on it because these ones are beat up pretty bad, which is kind of stinks because they have the nice Chevrolet script in them. There's that drain plug I was talking about. Definitely some aftermarket thing they put on there. I wonder if they stripped it out and drilled it out bigger. I'll find that out once we drain the oil later. But other than that, another thing is different is this piece right here is a spin-on filter adapter. These 283s up until 67 was last year of it. 68, they went to a spin-on filter. So at 67, they had a canister-style filter. It was a big canister with a removable cartridge and a long bolt that goes at the bottom. So that's been converted over as well. This is the second 283 I've bought that's already had the conversion done. I've had a few that still have the old school canister on them. I had a 69 Nova that I put a 67 327 in, and it still had the canister-style filter in it. I never switched it over, mainly because it still worked and I really didn't need to. And then the other thing I mentioned, like I said, this timing cover was painted at some point in life. So I wonder if they've changed anything in there, and there's a bolt missing there. We might take it off and see how it looks in there. I don't know how deep into tearing this thing apart I want to get, but we might just take a peek and see if it's got a double roller or something, or maybe somebody's put a camshaft in it too. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't run it yet. It's pretty dirty in here, and I mean somebody's put an intake carb on it, so they're trying to hot rod it a little bit. I'll start scraping off whatever I can get at, and then bring it over to the other side and start pressure washing it. this thing might still look pretty dirty on camera, which, I mean, it really kind of is, I guess. Pressure washing really just gets the thick stuff off, gives me a good starting point so I can start scrubbing. Now I gotta figure out how much more I want to tear this thing apart. I'm debating on pulling the intake off of it just because I don't like how they used red RTV to seal the thing, and I just so happen to have new intake gaskets here, so I might do that while I'm in it. And I might also switch the intake and carburetor, put this stuff on a shelf for later project, and put a different setup on it that I have laying around. I'm not really too sure what I'm doing yet. I might leave this on there just so I can get it running with what it came with, but this carburetor looks very, very nice, so I have no reason as to why I don't believe this wouldn't work. Because the carburetor I'd be putting on it, I know even less about, honestly. It's something I got at a swap meet, I think, and I really don't know anything about it. Other than that, I cleaned up a set of Mickey Thompson valve covers, I'll show you in a second, to put on here, just to make it look a little nicer. And I might not even use those valve covers yet. I'm not too sure what I'm going to put on it, because I also have a set of, over there, Cal Custom valve covers that may or may not go on it. So yeah, I really got to figure out right now how much more I'm going to tear it apart and go from there, I guess. Alright, so I've decided to take the intake off this thing and just to clean it out a little better underneath it, make sure everything is good and it's not a mouse house, something stuck in it. Because I have had motors in the past that are filled full of mouse house under the intake, so I really don't want this to be the case. And really gives me a better, sense in my head that I get all the water out of it. Like I said, I'm going to pull the intake off, pull the carburetor off. I'm going to probably pull them off separately, maybe, just so I can, actually, I don't know. I might pull them off separately just to see if this is a single plane or dual plane intake manifold, because I have no idea what it is. And yeah, just for whether I'm going to reuse it or put it on the shelf and use a different one, because I have a different one that I've been trying to sell for a while and I can't sell. It's an older Holly intake, which I really like to keep those things, but I decided to sell that one just because I got a huge stockpile of intakes carburetors, and I have a carburetor that matches it technically, because even though it's a Holly intake, it has like a quadrajet spreadbore pattern, and I have an old school Holly carburetor that is a quadrajet spreadbore pattern, which is pretty cool. So I might toss that on here, at least the intake, and then I might even toss that carburetor on. If it doesn't work, I'll throw a quadrajet on it, because I have a huge stockpile of quadrajets and they always seem to work. I don't think I've had one yet that doesn't work. I just got the carburetor pulled off of here and I realized it's not even a square bore intake. It is a spread bore, and they didn't even use an adapter like you're supposed to. They just used a regular gasket. These things can pretty much that little bit right there is all that was holding it from having a vacuum leak. So yeah, luckily I have adapters for those. I got a whole bunch of them, so I'll have to switch that out, put an adapter on it. Other than that, it's also a good idea that I pulled the intake because it's got water in it still, so I would have never probably been able to flush all that out. So it's really a good thing that I pulled the intake off it. I'm gonna clean all this up now and then move on to cleaning up the outside probably and go from there. Well, my curiosity is getting the best of me, and I'm gonna pull this timing cover to see if it has an aftermarket camshaft or not. And I figure, I might as well, since we're this far into it, to wouldn't hurt to have a new timing cover gasket, I guess. And like I said, I'm just really curious as to whether or not it has a camera. noticed so far is, you can see it, but this balancer has a repair sleeve on it already. That's so they must have had a bad leak at some point in life, and the balancer was worn out, so they had the repair sleeve in it to take up the difference. Lost an impact. I found the impact. I just put it back where it belongs. That's not like me at all. Well, I guess it was a good idea that I took the timing cover off, because that chain's got a lot of play in it. So, luckily I got a brand new double roller. We'll throw it on there too while we're at it, I guess. So in order to pull the cam out, I have to loosen up all the rocker arms, the push rods out first. Pretty much just enough to pull it out like that. I also have to pull the fuel pump off to get the fuel pump push rod out of the way in order to pull the cam out. So this has also been off at some point in life, which also makes me believe that the camshaft was replaced, just because there is red silicone on it. It's the same red silicone they use to seal the intake. That just slides right out. It should just slide right out. It's a little stuck right there. There we go. There is a number on the end of it. This says S274P. Now, it says no name stamped on it, so that doesn't help us too much. I'm going to look those numbers up, see if I can find anything out about it. I looked up the numbers, and that is an aftermarket camshaft, but it's nothing too radical. It is a sealed power 274, and there's nothing really special about it, other than it's slightly bigger than stock, but not by much. So that'd be all right for now. I'm gonna throw it back in, and pretty much just clean. I'm gonna clean out all the water that's still in it. Clean up the heads and everything. Like I said, I'm gonna put a different timing chain on it, and go from there. I got everything cleaned and wiped down in here. Looks a whole lot better now. So I'm gonna put the cam back in it, put the lifters back in it, and start reassembling it. I got all the lifters and push rods back in. I cleaned them all up just to make them look a little prettier. I still have to set all the valve lash on them still, but I'll do that after I get the timing chain on. So I gotta pull the bottom pulley off here so I can install the double roller pulley. This right here is just a pitman arm tool that I modified to fit around small block Chevy gears. I don't know if I'm assuming they make a part to, like an actual tool to do this, but I made this one work to do this. But pretty much you just tighten her up and she pops right off. There we go. So here's the brand new timing chain I'm gonna use. It's a comp cams. Got it at Advance Auto. It was on clearance for $41 plus an extra 25% off. So, you know, it'll be perfect for this thing. So on this, it's marked pretty much to where you set it top dead center, or you could advance it or retard the timing with this, depending on what keyhole you put it in. I'm gonna put this in to advance the timing to start off with. So it has, you know, a fighting chance of being somewhat of a, you know, quick motor, I guess. So according to the back of this, if I put it in the triangle hole, so this has like a little triangle on, or a little like peak on it, over the keyway, that should advance the timing 2 degrees from factory setting. So that's what we're gonna do. I gotta find something to knock that on with, and then we'll install this after. All right, I got that beat on there. Pretty much all I did was put a big socket over it and hammer it until it fit. Gotta turn the crank over a bit. I have this crank turning tool, which is broken, but it still works enough. Pretty much just goes over the keyway. So that should be straight up and down. Pull these off. I'm gonna do this without the chain first, just so I can line up the dots the way they're supposed to be. So it needs to go on just like that. Put it back off, the chain over it, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hook it on the bottom. It should just go right into the dowel here. It's off. So I don't know if you can really see that. It's really hard on camera. But this piston stamped 030. So that means this 283 has been bored 30 over, which is pretty cool. So it has been rebuilt at some point in life. I got all the valves adjusted. I didn't film it because my cheat sheet to adjust them is on my phone. So obviously I need my phone to do that instead of film it. But they're all adjusted. Got the dot where I wanted to on the timing chain. I took all the spark plugs out, lubed up all the cylinders again, and I just showed that on my little borescope thing. I don't know how well you could see it. These pistons, they're flat tops, obviously, but it's stamped 30 over. So that's pretty cool. So this thing has been rebuilt at some point in life. And another thing that I think the heads were also redone at some point in life, because all these keepers are nice and shiny, which and they're like zinc coated or something, which I've never seen factory ones look like that. I could be wrong though, but I don't know who bores out a block and doesn't do the heads at the same time. So it's pretty much ready for the intake, timing cover, a paint job, put the fuel pump back in it, distributor, and then I'll throw a starter and a few little things on it here and there to get this thing to run. So we're getting real close to the end here. All the mechanical side of things, it looks pretty good, so happy with that. Definitely do not see anything that would hinder it from running. I put the borescope in all the cylinders. They all look good, and it's got compression when I was turning it over to adjust all the valves. So that's also good as well. I didn't hear no weird clunks in the bottom end when I was turning it over. I guess we really won't know if it has a bad bottom end bearing till it's running. But I doubt that that's the case anyways, because this was pulled out of a project that it was going into, so I assume it's a good motor. At this point, I'm pretty much going to hose this thing down with brake cleaner. Hit all the, I'm going to hit the spots you really are going to see the most, so the paint sticks a little better there. Because really at the end of the day, all you're going to see of this motor is pretty much the front of the heads and the intake. You're not going to really see nothing else of it when it's in the car, so it doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but so one thing I decided to do is I'm going to weld these holes up here because I don't like them there. It's beneficial for somebody trying to run a regular alternator on it, but that's not really what I'm going for, I guess. And they sell the correct bracket to do that, so you don't have to drill the head. I'm going to heat the thing up, burn off anything that's not supposed to be there. Weld it up, grind it smooth, and all that thing. For those who didn't see that, I just lit a rag on fire. That's sense back. Alright. Gonna grind that smooth and go back to painting, I guess. So I was gonna put a new timing cover on this thing. I went to the speed shop this morning, but they did not have the one I wanted. Because they sell one there, usually, that comes with a gasket and the seal already put in it, and it comes with new bolts and everything. It's a pretty nice setup. You just, it comes with everything to put it on. And they did not have that one in stock. So I ended up just buying the gasket kit and reused the old timing cover. So I put just a little dab of silicone on there just to, or RTV, just to keep that stuck on there so it doesn't move around on me. So to properly install a timing cover on one of these motors, you pretty much have to take the pan off and then put the timing cover on, then you put the pan on. This one, you can tell that somebody's already been in here because they've modified it to fit without having to take the pan off. So I put just a little bit of silicone around that just so it doesn't leak. I shove that on there. So it's another reason why I'm reusing the old one. I just put a new seal in it, so it should be all good. I had a little bit of a struggle getting this thing on there. You gotta loosen these bottom pan bolts to really get it to seat in there. So I'm gonna tighten those up, finish snugking down the timing cover. The correct way to do this would be really to pull the pan off. Could I have done that? Yeah. Should I have? Probably. Did I? No. This would be good enough for what I'm doing with it, so I'm not too worried about it. So to paint this thing, I'm just going to use regular Rust-Oleum with primer. I don't use engine paint ever, just because it never sticks. I could clean this thing completely where there's no grease or grime anywhere on it, heat it up to get all the moisture out of it, prime it, paint it, and it still won't stick. This thing's all greasy and dirty, and this stuff always sticks to it. And it doesn't burn off like you think it would. Should I be covering the intake valley? Probably. There. That's good enough. I'll move it after. Whatever paint gets on the water jackets or whatnot, I can scrape off with a razor blade after. So I'm not too worried about that. At least I got the valve covers on it so nothing gets in there. So the one thing I always usually do with these raised ladder valve covers or fin valve covers is I'll paint them a certain color and then I'll DA the fins so it's nice and shiny aluminum after. Well, I let somebody borrow my DA and I don't feel like block sanding it all because that takes forever. So I'm just going to spray the whole thing with some metallic. Now, I've never painted a set like this before, but I guess we'll see how it comes out. This stuff usually always sticks pretty good no matter what. These parts are not bolted up right now. I just set the intake and valve covers on it just to see how it looks. I'm not a big fan of painting intake manifolds, mainly because if you have a fuel leakage carburetor, it's going to run all over the paint and, looks like garbage after. I gave it a quick wire wheel. Looks way better than what I was hoping for. Right now, I'm just deciding whether I want the valve covers to be silver or black. For now, I think I'm just going to leave them silver. But later on I probably will end up painting them black and scuffing them down like I mentioned. But for now this will do. I'm gonna pull this stuff back off, put the intake sealed on, and then put the valve covers in, and then whatever else after that. So right now I'm just gonna wipe down the where the intake bolts onto with some brake clean. That way there's no oil or nothing and prevents it from sealing. So, you should never take this as any of my videos as a kind of a how-to, because I just, the right and wrong way to do things, and I'm going to assume I definitely don't do things the right way. But the one thing I do and I would recommend is don't use the supplied China walls that come with your intake gasket kit. Just run a thick bead of silicone, because those rubber gaskets that can slide around and push out when you take down the intake and they have a big leak, you have to do it all over again. This stuff does not do that. It says just put a thick bead all the way up and around. If it's too much, you can always clean it up after it's already squished. But do that. I like to run it up the ends of the heads a little bit on each side, just to help it seal a little better. Am I using too much? Probably, but I have had cases where I've used not enough and I had to do it all over again, and I don't want to do that today. Another thing I do is when I am reusing, old cast iron heads and an old aluminum intake, is I'll put a very, very thin bead of silicone around the runners of the gasket too. Also, because I put an intake on without doing that, and well, it's leaked, and I had to take it back apart. So all it takes is it happening once, and I ain't gonna do it again. So on this old reused parts, I always just put a little bit on it, just for a little insurance. Not a crazy amount, like a very, very, very thin amount, so it doesn't even squish out really. You don't see it laying everywhere. Pretty much just get a little around it, and I rub it in with my fingers on both sides pretty much. Just very little to help it seal. Also, these gaskets are somewhat thin, so you gotta be careful not to tear it. And whether it's new or old stuff, I always put some around the coolant ports, because you don't want a coolant leak into your intake galley, or burning back through your you don't want a coolant leak. That's what I'm trying to say. Do the one side, I flip it over, use the same, I don't add any more. I usually put little dabs on one side, flip it over, and whatever's stuck to my fingers is what it gets. Squish it all around. So just a real thin coat where you won't even notice it. Once you go to tighten it down, it's not going to squish and ooze all out. Down in there. Also helps stick the gasket to the head, so you're not fighting it when you're trying to put the bolts in, which helps. Other than that, I put another little dab just in the corners, on top of the gasket, right here, right there, just to also prevent oil leak. I'll get the other one coated up, and then we'll bolt the intake on. Usually when I install intakes, I like to put new bolts, just because, they're cheap and wouldn't kill me to spend a few dollars on some bolts, just to make it look a little nicer. But when I went out to the store earlier, I forgot to get some, so it looks like I'm going to reuse the old ones. Should have been a little more careful putting it on. I that one corner up just a little bit, but I was able to move it with a screwdriver, get the bolt hole to line up. Then I like to usually just start a bolt in each corner so I know the gasket's lined up, and then go from there. So the intake's all bolted down now. Like I said, along the edge it oozed out. I'm gonna probably wipe it off, or I'll wait for it to dry and cut it off after. But I'm gonna get the carburetor on now, and then we're gonna change the oil, change the filter, and start priming the motor so we don't start it dry. So this is the carburetor I'm going to be using. I don't know much about it whatsoever, but if you realize or notice, it looks just like one of the new Summit Racing carburetors. It's practically the same design. This one's spread bore, not a square bore. So I'm going to try it. Like I said, I don't know nothing about it. It's something I got at a swap meet, I think, and hopefully it works. So I fast forward a few things real quick. Just the tedious stuff that you probably want to watch. Got the valve covers on, got the distributor in. I primed the motor before I put that in, so we're not starting it dry. Had decent oil pressure. All I gotta do now is put the cap on it, the wires. Oh, I got spark plugs in too. Put the cap, wires, put a starter in it, throw some gas at it and the battery, and hopefully this thing fires up. So we're getting real close to the end to hear this thing run. So I'm hoping it does run. I got number 1 marked on the cap and the distributor, so it should be right in time for when we start it. Only way it would not be in time is if it's 180 out, which it should not be. It should be exactly where it needs to be. But I guess we won't know for sure until we fired it up. Also, we're reusing the distributor itself that came with this motor. It had a broken rotor, so I'm hoping the rest of it's fine. If not, then I'll have to find another distributor around here. I'm only putting 2 bolts in them, and I'm not running no gaskets, so it's still probably gonna have some of an exhaust leak, but it's not going to be noticeable that much for what we're just doing right now. Alright, so it has been many days later since that last clip you just saw. I think it's been like a week or so. I could not get this thing to start, and I couldn't figure out what I did wrong. I knew I did something wrong, just because nothing was really making sense. It had fuel, it had spark. I checked the timing 15 times. I readjusted the valves a bunch of times, and I could not get the thing to run. Had good compression and everything. I compression checked all the cylinders, took all the spark plugs out, cleaned them, could not figure out what was wrong with it. And then I remembered that I put a new timing chain in it, and I advanced the timing. So, factory timing, you go on this little nub right here, and then you line up this dot with that dot. Now, if you can see, I advanced the cam timing, so I'm over here now. That little triangle is supposed to line up with that dot. So I messed that up. I had to pull his timing cover back off and whatnot, and now I got to pull the cam gear off, turn the crank over, and then line up that dot with that triangle. Then it should run. So like I said, everything else checked out completely perfect. That there should have been no issue as to why this motor was not running. That is the issue. So I was wrong. I messed up, but you know, here I am telling you that I messed up. I'm not gonna say, oh yeah, it magically worked and whatnot, and we're all good to go. It was not good to go. So I'm going to clean this up. I'm gonna put some silicone to reuse that timing cover gasket there. Just got a little bit of oil on it, whatnot. So fix that, change this, and then I'll probably put the valve covers on it. Just put them back on it, and it should run. So I guess I'll get that done and try to start it again. Everything's hooked up now. Got gas, coils hooked up. Should just start. Should. Oh. Well, it started. That's better than nothing. Put a little more gas in this thing. That's way better than what was happening before. I also don't know how good this carburetor is. I'm gonna do my best here. Turn the idle a bit. Alright. Well, it ran. I'm gonna get some more gas hooked to this thing and make it run a little longer. So how I got this hooked up is just got a ground wire from the motor to the battery, power from the battery to the starter. This is technically my key for the starter. Coil is hooked up to that, so right now the coil's hot. And should just tap it like this. Like you're turning the key, fire right up. Got to do a little more adjusting to make it idle, but it's getting there. All right, so I turned the timing up a little bit, and I got it into a big jug of gas that's practically empty, so I don't know if it's pulling anything from there. Turn the timing up, adjust the carburetor just a little bit, just enough to get the thing to idle, and it should light right off now. Well, there you have it. She's a runner. That's pretty much all I was gonna do to this thing is make sure it ran, and now I'm gonna shove it off in the corner, and I'll probably cover it up so it doesn't get no dirt, nothing in it, and save it for a future project. But it ran pretty good. So it's real snappy for a little 283, that's for sure. Definitely have no complaints. I checked the oil pressure. I didn't show it on the camera, but it had good oil pressure, so that's good. Definitely a good little motor. Just that little mess up I had there with getting the marks wrong on the timing chain, which is no big deal. It's fixed now and, you know, running. So it's all that matters. Well, there you have it. My little Craigslist rebuilt 283 runs pretty good. Needs a little fine tuning. Carburetor probably needs to be gone through. But I know that it runs. I know that it has good oil pressure. So it's definitely a good motor to go into a project at some point in life. I don't know what project I'm going to put it in yet, but it will be good for something in the future for sure. I'm always put small blocks and everything, and definitely a good little motor. sounds real snappy and whatnot, so definitely be good in something. But yeah, that's really about it. I didn't spend too much money on this whole entire thing, honestly. I think I paid $300 for the motor originally. I got that timing chain on clearance for like 30 bucks. The intake and carb, I could not tell you where that came from, but I do know for a fact that it was practically free, if not free. Same with the distributor. Distributor is something I had laying around forever. I think I paid 10 bucks for the valve covers, and then however much for a can of paint. So at the end of the day, I have less than 500 bucks this running small block. That's board 30 over, it's got power pack heads, and it's got an old school Holley street dominator intake on it. Just a real good motor. That's probably the end of this video. I do have a new project that's right behind the camera. I'm going to show you quick. So I guess I'll show you that. Here is my newest project that you will be seeing videos on at some point soon. This is a 1977 Chevy Nova, and I bought this thing to be my drag car for next year. It was originally a V8 factory bucket seat 4-speed car, and well, you know, it's pretty rough in here now. I gotta get rid of that because I hate that sunroof. But the floors are very solid, the frame's very solid. There's no motor, no trans in it right now, but I'm gonna be putting a small block in it with, I'm probably gonna put an automatic in it just to race it, but I'm gonna keep all the 4-speed stuff for later on in life, for whenever I were to swap it back to a 4-speed. And I also picked up a 9-inch rear end for it, so it's gonna get a 9-inch small block, probably a turbo 350 trans, maybe a 400, I'm not too sure, whatever I can find, I guess. It's already got subframe connectors, and I can see that under there, right over there. Probably needs a little bit of help here and there, but overall it's actually a pretty solid car. Already has a fiberglass hood. This side I think is the better of the two sides. So yeah, like I said, this will be a future project that I'll be getting to soon, and I guess this is also the end of the video. So I will see you in the next one.